Hi, my name is Sarah Talley. I'm a school counselor and a licensed clinical counselor in the state of Pennsylvania. Today we're going to be talking about generalized anxiety disorder. For our hook today, I would like you to look at the 4 different characters or students, and I want you to reflect about what it is that you see. What do you think about that, about what you see, and what makes you wonder? And so when I'm looking at this, I definitely see 4 very different students who are experiencing some kind of distress. Um, and I think that anxiety can appear in very different ways. And it's different for everyone. And so I also wonder, what it is we can do to help some of these students. So hopefully at the end of today's lesson, you'll have a few things in your tool belt to help students with generalized anxiety disorder. So our objective today will be students will be able to define anxiety. Students will be able to name external and internal characteristics of students with anxiety, and students will be able to identify 3 teaching strategies to teach students with anxiety. And so when we're looking at what anxiety is, generalized anxiety disorder is marked by distressing, persistent anxiety or dysfunctional anxiety-reducing behaviors in which a person is unexplainably and continuously tense and uneasy. And when we're specifically looking at generalized anxiety disorder, the key part is that it is, hurt causing the person's undue stress for long periods of time. There is a difference between being anxious, right? And there's plenty of things that can stress us out and make us anxious versus being consistently anxious and about things and it to the point where it is disruptive to your life. Um, and so I think when we're talking with students and we're talking with other people, like trying to define that those are very different things. But 10% of children ages 3 to 17 have diagnosed anxiety according to the CDC. And it is the most common psychiatric disorder during adolescence. And so for the most part, when we are in the classroom, like we will see plenty of students with generalized anxiety disorder. Um, Anxiety, according to the Department of Education qualifications for IDEA, again, it's that long period of time marked by degree that adversely affects the child's educational performance. So there does need to be proof, that their anxiety is affecting their education, and it does need to be over a long period of time. Being anxious for a couple weeks, might not be the marker that we're really looking for. But an inability to learn that cannot be explained by intellectual, sensory, or health factors. And so with anxiety, it is very important to rule out some of the health factors. And so it really is a team approach with the child's like healthcare providers as well to make sure that there's not other things going on. An inability to build or maintain satisfactory interpersonal relationships with peers and teachers. So it can be very hard, for students to be able to connect with those around them when they're dealing with their own internal struggles. Inappropriate types of behaviors or feelings under normal circumstances, and a general pervasive mood of unhappiness or depression, a tendency to develop physical symptoms or fears associated with personal or school problems. So some of the causes of anxiety, like I think with many psychiatric disorders, is it biological or is it environmental? There very much, it can be genetic, and it can come from that place of genetics, but it also can come from environmental causes such as problems at home, so dealing with the family, problems at school, problems in the outside community, and then cultural and medical causes as well. And so when we're working with a student with anxiety, understanding that no 2 cases are going to be the exact same, pretty similar to our hook. but also, that it is a complex situation and it probably is coming from multiple different places. Um, So some symptoms and behaviors of people with students with anxiety, there's going to be some short and long-term consequences. And so when we're working with a student, it is understanding that they could have poor academic performance, and in the short term, less consequences, but over the course of a long time, those poor academic performances can have some pretty long-term consequences. Also substance use is pretty common, and a way that people have used to cope with anxiety. Um, and those can have other, short and long-term consequences as well. And then generalized anxiety disorder tends to be a comorbid psychiatric with other psychiatric disorders, including depression, eating disorders, obsessive compulsive disorders. And so understanding that too, the student may be experiencing like multiple different things at the same time, and in their own situation. Some externalizing characteristics is angry or moody behaviors. Again, like while they're dealing with their own internal anxiety, it could be coming out in different ways, especially depending on the age of the child. And then internalizing characteristics, so withdrawal and avoidance. This can be seen in students who have some social anxiety, so they might be avoiding their peers, and then also to students who are refusing to come to school. That could be part of that withdrawal and avoidance. Social struggles tie in again to the withdrawal, but also having a hard time connecting with peers. Some students with anxiety are thinking everyone's staring at them, everyone's thinking about them, and it's really hard to then connect with others when you think that about those around you. Unwanted thoughts. So students with anxiety struggle, with dealing with the unwanted thoughts, the negative thoughts, and the things that pop up in their head. And so that can be very distracting when they're trying to learn in your classroom. And then any type of repetitive behaviors. And again, those can kind of tend to go with some of the other psychiatric disorders that some of my classmates will be talking about. But the overall thing to take home is that everyone is different in how it is going to present. So it is very hard to come up with characteristics, but that students should be, getting extra support that they need. So let's go into how do we teach children with anxiety. And again, this is, a student who has been struggling for a long time. And so a few things to do with them is that they could have extended time, the use of a timer, access to the nurse or school counselor, very clear directions. What are your expectations? And setting those clear what it is you're looking for so that the student isn't having to double think or check, and questioning themselves. Presenting to the teacher. So if you're struggling with some social anxiety, maybe they give a presentation, but it's only to the teacher, and not necessarily in front of the entire class. Relationship building. So if the student can trust you, and trust that you're gonna keep them safe, and things like that. Cognitive behavioral intervention. So like looking at some modeling. Are you modeling problem solving? Are you modeling like how to get through, a challenging thing? Positive reinforcement. So constantly giving positive feedback when you see the student is doing really well, just to reinforce their positive behaviors. And then consistency. Do they know what to expect from you as a teacher? Do they know what to expect from you in the classroom? And then a lot of my colleagues in the elementary level, and even in the middle school level, tend to do a calm down corner. Some of my colleagues in the high school, my counselor friends have, calm down corners in their offices. And so quiet space where a student can take a minute, recollect themselves, and then come back to learning. So a few instructional technology things. Videos with modeling are really, really helpful, showing the students what is expected. and what the appropriate behavior is. There are also meditative apps. Headspace is one that I've used in the high school level. And then UCLA also has a mindful meditative app. And that can go towards your calm down corner. That can be used, as a class to just get everyone, to center everyone. And then my school uses Kooth, which is a mental health internet support place, but it also has fun activities to do in the classroom as well to help students learn about mental health and cope with anything that might be coming up for them. And then some family and community resources. So the Child Anxiety Network has a bunch of different things to use and to help families talk about anxiety. I definitely, and I am a school counselor, so recommend talking to your school counselor or school psychologist to get some extra supports put in place for the classroom. And I also help teachers, work with some of my students with anxiety. And then I always recommend therapy to really get to the root of what's going on with the student, and to create those like coping skills that really are going to help the student to be successful. And so we actually have a provider in our school. This year, our provider's name is Beth Anna. But I also provided the PATH and Marikey links. Those are also local therapy centers in Philadelphia, where I am located. And then 988 is the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Many students who do struggle with anxiety will struggle with other types of mental health issues. And so I always am sharing the 988 number to make sure everyone is aware of that resource. So I would like to check for understanding. If you could take 1 minute to write about what you've learned today and what you still have questions about. My name is Sarah Talley. I'm happy to talk to anyone about anxiety and what it might look like in the classroom on a further scale. But take a minute and see if there's anything else that you still have questions about. And here is my We're Cited and articles that I use. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am very passionate about helping students with anxiety, and so this was an absolute pleasure to be able to work on. Have a great day, everyone.